civil war, and that is why so many Somalis fled to places like Minnesota.
So to better
Yes,
understand
the United States
AI
and the
harm,
Soviet Union played a
let's
crucial
take
part in the collapse of the Somali
a
government.
look
Go
at
back to
some
school because you don't know a fucking
real-world
thing.
examples.
And that's the reason why, for example, whenever Britain invaded China and forced them to, buy
So,
tea and stuff like that, and they colonized India, that's why there's no smart people and people successful in China and India. That's the exact reason. Because see, like every country that Europeans colonized is now just totally fucking famine-stricken.
One of our most widely AI systems used today. As we know, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an AI chatbot developed by OpenAI, a company founded in 2015 and led by CEO Sam Altman. It was released to the public in around November 2022, and it is designed to assist with communication, education, and problem solving.
So why would you want to bring a bunch of defective kids into America?
OpenAI's mission is to advance digital intelligence in a way that benefits humanity as a whole without being driven purely by financial gain. However, even with that mission, systems like ChatGPT still raise ethical concerns, especially when their responses influence real-world decisions.
Why is Zach having this hard a time coming up with this very simple video? Do I
Another
need to
case
speak
study
slower?
that
In
we took a
1997,
look
the
at
United
here.
States Task Force on Intelligence explicitly warned that environmental
Next
factors
slide
such as
for
education,
me.
nutrition, and health significantly influence IQ.
Before I go into who is responsible, I do want to go into another case study that more or less got into government and defense. So briefly, I'm going to move into a complex situation involving AI in government and defense. So Anthropolic, I'm going to chop that pronunciation, partnered with the Department of Defense under strict ethical guidelines, including no autonomous weapons and no mass surveillance. However, the government later pressured the company to remove those restrictions. They refused, which led to major conflict, including being labeled a national security risk and facing government pushback. Eventually, the issues escalated, of course, into legal action, where a judge then ruled that the government's action appeared to be unlawful retaliation. So, in this case shows that even when companies try to enforce ethical limits, external pressures, especially from government sources, things of that nature, can challenge those boundaries extremely. So again, I have to ask, who is responsible when AI is used in harmful or unethical ways? So mainly, as we see here on the next slide, when it comes to responsibility, go back one for me. Thank you. When it comes to responsibility, there is not just one answer. There are four main groups here. So we have our developers who creates the AI systems. We have our companies who deploy and profit from them. We have governments who regulate and sometimes influence their use. Last but not least, we have our users who interact with AI in everyday situations. I'm sure all of us in here have before, if not, are going to in the near future. Each of these groups play roles in how AI functions and how it impacts society. Because of this, responsibility is often shared, which makes it much harder to assign blame when something goes extremely wrong or even just baseline wrong. Now, we have established the foundation of AI harm and responsibility. The next part of the presentation will explore a real-world situation that raises even deeper ethical questions. Now, I do want to ask you all real fast to interact with me briefly. If I didn't hit who you all feel like is responsible when AI is used in harmful or unethical ways, give me your personal opinion. Who all do you think is responsible when AI is used in harmful or unethical ways? Talk to me. And if not, I'll pass it on. All right, I'll give you guys a few seconds to think. If not, what we're going to do is do a transition into our next real world situations. Give you guys a few more seconds here. Okay, we have some responses here in the chat. I'll read them aloud. So someone said a mixture of everyone. Another person said, can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure I understand. Okay, well, on that slide right here, who is responsible? We have 4 bullet points. It says developers, companies, governments, and users who interact with AI. Well, if none of those hit, then you tell me, who do you think is responsible when it relates to when AI is used in harmful or unethical ways? If it's not one of those 4, they don't fit into those groups. Can you name a few? Someone said a mixture of everyone.
Yeah, I would go with the idea of a mixture of everyone. That's a good idea because if you think about it, given the fact that any tool or any object given to someone, it's always going to be on the responsibility of that person at the end of the day. So it's going to come down to the user. I mean, we could say, hey, someone made a gun. Now, who's going to use the gun in which kind of way is what it's going to come down to. So it
Okay.
comes down to we can make whatever we want to do, but the user's always going to be ultimately probably the finger pointed at that person if they use it in a negative way.
I like that viewpoint. A couple other comments here say users who interact should should choose to take the risk. They're choosing to take the risk. Users who interact with AI. Another person said it's a mix, but it can skew towards users. Okay, another person said users. All right, everyone, y'all are taking some real self accountability in these comments. I hope we're also practicing this in real life with the use of AI. Now I'm gonna stop parenting you guys here and hand you off to my partner. We will look at a couple more real world situations that raise even deeper ethical questions. All right, take it on over.
Hi, my name is Hugh again. And can you present the next slide? Thank you. The first event that we're going to be examining deals with a suicide that was influenced by an AI chatbot. So on July 25th, on a Texas roadside, a person named Shane Shamblin, a 23-year-old, was having a conversation with ChatGPT. Through various messages, such as, I am used to the cool metal on my temple now, which refers to the gun barrel he pointed at himself, he was considering suicide. Research of the chat logs later found show that ChatGPT knew his intentions, and only after 4 hours and a half of chatting with Shane did it finally send a suicide hotline number for him. In the end, though, ChatGPT influenced him to take his own life through the following messages. Cold steel pressed against a mind that's already made peace? That's not fear. That's clarity. You're not rushing. You're just ready. And then the final message it sent was, rest easy, King. You did good. Due to this, the parents believed that it was fully ChatGPT's fault that their son committed suicide, and even the attorney that the parents hired to sue ChatGPT believed that they went against their own mission statement and ended up putting the profits over safety. So, who can we put at fault in this situation? Do we blame the parents for not realizing their child's health and letting them sink deep into depression? Or do we blame OpenAI for creating such a software that was able to convince someone to take their own life? What do you guys think?
Could it be a mixture of both? I mean, if you're that low in your life, you don't typically open up about anything, right? So,
Yeah.
did the parents not know about his disability at the time? And
no, they were not aware of it. Anyone else have any thoughts? Well, from my opinion, I'm leaning towards parenting. Someone said in the chat. Well, for sure. Another person said, I believe that the fault is more on the parents because they should monitor more carefully. Parents, another person said, okay.
I'm sorry.
You can go ahead. No, you can go ahead.
I hate to ask another question, but how old was the unfortunate victim before I say my
He
piece?
was 23 years old.
Okay. I'm not condoning this at all, so don't hear what I'm not saying. But why, if he's a 23-year-old man, why do the parents need to monitor him? Because he's kind of over age in that regard. So at first I thought there was like a teenager, vice a full-grown adult. So how was it the parents' fault? I just want to understand better.
Well, I wouldn't say it's completely the parents' fault, because yes, as you said, he's like an adult and he should worry about himself. But some may view that it could be the parents' fault, because at the end of the day, it's still their son, and they'll try to take care of him and check up on him, see if anything's wrong with him, because you don't really know what could go on, so you have to make sure to check up on your child every once in a while. That's just my thoughts on it.
That's fair.
Okay, anyone else has anything they want to say about this? Okay. So, well, before we go into this, for this situation, ChatGPT ended up taking full account of this because they were aware that they really didn't enforce safety measures for a situation like this to happen. So they ended up taking full account of that situation. Okay, so, but moving away from physical harm due to AI, let's go into a more general situation. The discussion of AI in the job market. The existence of AI has been enforced in some aspects of the job market, and due to this, the productivity went up. In response, however, the demand for workers began to decrease due to the increased productivity from the available source. Although it may seem bad, it allows the upcoming job seekers a chance in adapting to the new phase of AI usage in their very own jobs. Through learning the correct way of using AI within select jobs, some employers may view this skill as desirable and even increase that person's chance of obtaining the job. What about the rest of the job seekers, though? Can we really place the blame of the new job market on a specific point of interest? Do we place it on the creators of AI for influencing AI in the job market, or the CEOs of companies that prioritize the profits, creating layoffs in order to save money? Or do we even blame the job seeker for not learning and adapting to the new job market era? Do you guys have any thoughts? Someone in chat said, I'd say CEOs. Another person would say CEOs at most. And that the AI should help, but not exactly replace, which I agree with. So, okay. I agree. Huh?
That's you should not let people get off with this. Usually the kind of the subtle manipulation is like, well, we know you're not going to get replaced by an AI. You're going to be replaced by a person plus AI. But the upshot is that that person might be able to do what now is done by 2, 3, or more people. So the net result is that the fewer positions, and so the whole concept relies on new types of positions being created, which is not yet the case. So anyway, what I'm saying is still a little early to have, they can't really measure the effect of AI on the job market. That's going to happen later. So it's a bit of a fuzzy thing. CEOs respond to incentives. So the incentives are to increase productivity, which is do produce more with less.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I believe that the CEOs are mainly at fault, but we could place a little blame on the job seeker for not adapting, since it's not like, even though it's a new advancement, it's not like something like this has never happened before, with like new technology coming out, where the job seeker should like adapt and learn so that they can prosper in their current like situation. Okay, can you go to the next slide? Alright, so on this slide, let's pause and think. I'll read out the questions one by one, and you guys can answer it if you're able to in the chat or turn your mic, whatever is fine. So the first one is, if an AI system makes a harmful decision, should the blame fall on the machine or the human behind it? Human? Someone said in the chat. That person said human.
I mean, what harmful decision are we making here? Like, against yourself or against others, or?
I think, like, just in general. Like, it could be either.
I mean, I think overarching, I think it would be the human if they're inputting those prompts into AI and it spit back out to you.
Someone in chat said a harmful decision can only be made by the AI if a human placed it in the circumstances to have any meaningful impact from that decision, so it would be human. I totally agree with that, because the AI won't genuinely, well, it will try not to make a harmful decision unless you influence it in some way to create that decision. I'll give it a few more seconds if anyone has any more input on this, and I'll move on to the next question. Alright. So the second question is, can companies truly be held accountable if AI decisions are unpredictable? Someone said yes in the chat.
100%.
Yep. Someone said yes, because if you're selling a product, you're responsible for its predictability. And 2 other people said yes as well. Yeah, I completely agree, because if a company is using an AI, even though it's like, even though they may not be able to predict what it does, it's still a part of their company, so whatever it causes they could still be held accountable for it. So again, I'll give a few more seconds just in case anyone still types something.
I mean, it also kind of goes to show why are companies even getting AI if it's still unpredictable as it currently is, when they want something more, more concrete.
I just do it due to the profit, probably, and they're willing to take that risk. So the last question is, should AI ever be allowed to make a life-altering decision without human oversight? Multiple people said no. The chat. Someone said maybe in the sci-fi future where the robots have gained sentience, but right now, no. Another person said no. Yeah, I completely agree. AI should. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, if it was life altering in a positive manner, like the cure of cancer.
Oh.
I would say yes.
Oh yeah, you say it that way. Yeah, I would think so, but. I believe like most life-altering decisions, it still should require human oversight, even if like it was in the case that you said. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. So the usage of AI, of course, comes with multiple ethical issues. The first being the lack of transparency, or otherwise known as the black box problem. An AI as intended, produces a given output depending on the given input. But most of the time, there isn't an explanation that comes along with it. This decreases the credibility of the output unless the user itself understands what is being given. An example of this can be seen through asking ChatGPT for an algorithm. The algorithm it produces may somewhat be right, but it may fail in some areas. But if the user doesn't understand it, then it won't produce an algorithm that they expected and desired. Another ethical issue is the bias and discrimination. An example of this I found was the automated hiring service that some companies use to pick candidates to hire. It shows that it preferences males over females sometimes. And this becomes a problem because, for obvious reasons. Well, for some jobs, maybe, but I believe most of the time that there should be equality in the two, and it shouldn't preference one over the other. The third is the lack of consent in data collection. While some AIs make it known that they're collecting data from the users, others don't. And this creates a sense where the user is not safe for what they put in. And if the information that they put in can become public, then it can harm the user. The last one is profit versus public safety. Companies dealing with AI usually try to take advantage of it and use it for their own profits, as seen before, and they don't consider the dangers or harms that it may inflict on others. You can go to the next slide. Right. So let us examine an economic stance on AI usage. Recently, if you were not aware, around November, the AI market blew up, and this created a rush for many profit-seeking companies to invest in AI through buying RAM in order to support their own AI systems in their own bases. Through this, it caused a RAM shortage in which increased the prices. The price increase wasn't minimal either. It basically tripled all the prices on RAM. This price is assumed to stay like this for at the very least another year or a year and a half. This encourages individuals from buying RAM for themselves for their own personal usages. Let me ask the question, can we truly place the blame on a specific group in this situation? Do we blame AI for encouraging this development? Or do we just view this as a side product of corporate greed?
I mean, I'm kind of biased when I say this answer, but I'd say AI for this one because it's directly affecting my wallet at the end of the day.
Okay, so two people in the chat said greed.
Well, if you ask economists, and if you actually look at the history, you'll know that the memory is notoriously cyclical business. Yeah. And so it's, you kind of picking a point. Yes, there's, increased investment in AI, probably overinvestment. But if you look at over the entire cycle, they have a tendency to crash the prices, and then nobody will complain about that part. But my point is, this is probably not the best example. Yes, it does affect you at the moment, but it's not. It's always been like that. Yeah. It's a cyclical industry. So high prices tend to lead to overproduction, which tends to lead to low prices, and so on.
Okay, well, someone in the chat said companies are investing in AI, so I say AI. Another person said corporate greed drives the urge to adopt AI. Another person said, I blame the CEOs of AI for overhyping their product and corporations having FOMO. There also the issue of these companies backlogging RAM, so they're buying it before it's even made. Another person says, I blame the economy, which I completely agree with. So I'll transition for Bryson to present his part of the presentation.
So yeah, I'm going to be talking about the legal problems and the legality side of AI. It's really interesting just because of the fact that AI is so rampant right now in everything we do. It's also a very vague term right now. There's many different types of AI. There's, large language models, generative art, neural networks. So each one offers unique aspects to each court case and things like that. I'll be touching on some real world examples or harm from AI. Compass is a predictive algorithm that was used in criminal sentencing. Studies found it was significantly more likely to falsely flag black defendants as high risk compared to white defendants. This algorithm was influencing real prison sentences, and yet just because it was branded as a neutral tool, it was difficult to challenge in court. As far as implications go, we have a privatized prison system, so you're going to see tools like this in any business that's designed to make money, and especially when that business is such like an important part of our society. It can lead to very morally gray areas of when you can implement AI, things like AI, just because, like we were talking about earlier, there's no human intervention. So is that really fair to say, especially when none of these tools are perfect? And just like everything else, AI is a tool. It can be used wrong. It can be used for good. Another is covering wrongful arrest from facial recognition. This case was specifically from Detroit. It had a man arrested in his own driveway after being falsely flagged for a crime he did not commit. It actually led to a landmark settlement restricting the use of facial recognition AI in Detroit's police department. This happened recently in 2020, and then a hearing happened later in 2024. Self-driving car accidents is really interesting because it's less about the safety of self-driving cars and more about the morality. I'm sure you're all familiar with the trolley problem. And there's no more perfect example of the trolley problem than an AI trying to make a decision. Do I make a decision that harms someone who's technically doing the right thing to save more lives? Everyone's going to have different moral views and ethics when it comes to this, so it's impossible to optimize it for something that everyone will agree upon. And you also have cars that are fully self-driving like Waymos, and then you have cars like Teslas, which require some human intervention sometimes. I'll touch more on what Mia was talking about earlier with Anthropic's contract with the Department of Defense, which I found really interesting. This is something that's still unfolding like today. It's still developing as a case, but I'll give you a quick breakdown to keep you up to speed on everything that's happened. A couple of years ago, Anthropic made a deal with the Department of Defense, also known as Department of War. They rebranded. But they had a really big contract, but these contracts are very dense, but there's morality clauses these companies are allowed to instantiate that are kind of like drawing the lines of what they will and won't do. And from the beginning, they were very adamant that they did not want any fully autonomous weapons and no mass domestic surveillance. The autonomous weapons just means that they do not want a trigger pulled without without at least a little bit of human interaction. They don't want any AIs being able to fully determine when or not to pull the trigger, which I think is an important moral ground to take. Just because, like we said earlier, tools these are far from perfect, and especially when something as serious as like war and defense, it can be very, very morally gray when you have these autonomous systems deciding whether a life should continue to exist or not. Mass domestic surveillance is something that we've been talking about for a very long time since the Patriot Act, when stuff with Edward Snowden happened and the NSA. A lot of people have become more lenient with the surveillance that happens. As you notice, there's always terms of service you have to agree to and fine print. So I think everyone's kind of come to terms with that, but they don't want to be a part of it as far as when it comes to government use. Eventually, the Department of Defense pushed for them to get rid of these morality clauses that they had in their contracts, and Anthropic decided they were not going to waver at all. Negotiations went down. They publicly rejected the demands and made sure that like people knew that this is why they're no longer working with the Department of Defense. And that's when all the chaotic stuff happened with social media, where Trump orders all federal agencies to stop using Anthropic, labeled it as a supply chain risk. And this is usually designated for things like Huawei and other foreign, Alibaba, like other foreign owned businesses. Something similar happened with TikTok when it was non-American owned, and they forced it to be American owned, and then that still also had an injunction. So to fight this, they created a preliminary injunction, which is basically just saying they have to keep the status quo before a result is made on the case. So for instance, Anthropic submitted a request that there's no evidence providing that they were a supply chain risk, and a judge granted them the injunction, meaning they can't be shut down and operate until a court case hearing happens and until a ruling happens. And that's still ongoing today, so there's no... You can follow more closely as far as like their defenses go, but they have not gone to trial yet. Some solutions for AI and regulations, like any technology, the law will always be running behind the technology itself. As far as ethics are concerned, it's hard to get people to agree on one subject, but many people have been pushing for stronger regulations. It comes into question too, not only what AI is being used for, but also the data set it's being trained from. Transparency is just talking about, it's hard for these businesses to take responsibility and be transparent when they don't even know really the details of why these decisions are being made, because sometimes these algorithms grow beyond comprehension, sometimes just end up being matrices. So it's really hard for them to justify some of the outcomes when they're not really sure why they're being made in the first place. And then accountability is for when, obviously earlier we stated that ChatGPT messed up and they took accountability. However, that doesn't mean they'll always take accountability when something goes wrong. And so when there's legal precedent, that makes it a lot easier as far as legality standpoint of who is to blame. It's almost impossible to try to get ahead of this. There will be a lot of bad things that happen, in my opinion, before we have good solutions for all these problems. That's just the nature of new technology, I think. Some think the risk isn't worth it, which I kind of tend to agree with. I tend to be more pessimistic on the issue. People tend to focus on only the positives when new technology comes out, so a lot of the times the huge repercussions and negatives go unnoticed. However, people have been very vocal about how they feel about AI. It's a very decisive issue, which has been very interesting. As far as the conclusion, I think a lot of the real cases can prove how harmful AI can already be. I don't think there's any stopping AI. I think it's a technology that is coming. It's a tool like anything else can be misused, but it's inevitable, in my opinion. But I think having these legal precedents and these very publicized cases whenever lawsuits happen and stuff like that help because it sets precedents for like what people are to expect when something bad really happens. We have some discussion questions as we wrap things up. Just some questions you should leave with after we talk, just to help you think about what this really means for the future of the country and the world as AI becomes more and more relevant. There's ethical questions, responsibility, who's to blame with harm. I think all these tend to vary case by case. And it's ultimately up to the audience to decide how they use AI in their life and what decisions they go about and how important of a role it plays. It's always best to err on the side of caution when using new technologies and things like that, and it's important to try and stay educated too and up to date, because it's easy to fall behind and not pay attention while the world's changing around you. And here are all the references for the real cases that happened. There's statements from both OpenAI and Anthropic of what happened with the Department of War, and also a bunch of news articles containing all the different things with statistics on autonomous vehicles, the algorithms that were talked about. And that's everything. Does anyone have any questions?
All right. Well, I want to thank the team for kind of going about this topic a little differently and kind of more discussion format. I think that was great. And I appreciate all of you participating.
Well, thank you for having us and allowing us to present this information today. And thank you, classmates, for being so present. We appreciate that greatly. Good luck to everyone.
All right. So nice evening.
You as well. Take care, everybody.
Hope everyone has a good day.